State Enterprises Commission. And on my immediate left, we have Professor Robert Ebo Hinson, Professor of Marketing, Department of Marketing and Entrepreneurship, University of Ghana Business School. Now let's listen to what the President said on May Day in relation to public sector productivity. We'll be back after that.
Everything comes to a stop when it rains, and we seem to expect the rest of the world also to stop. We have no respect for the hours set aside for work. We pray, we eat, we visit during working hours. We spend hours chatting on the telephone when customers are waiting to be served, thereby increasing our labor costs. We take a week off for every funeral, and then we wonder why we are not competitive. The service that we provide in our hospitality industry does not match that of our competitors, and many of us have sadly come around to accept poor service as the norm. There is a particularly pernicious attitude to property that we find at work. There's the petty stealing of paper, envelopes, tea, milk, and other equipment. There's the reckless use of office vehicles. Employees show no inclination to protect the things that are in the offices and factories, and extreme reluctance to stand up for what we know to be right in our workplaces in general.
Yeah, welcome back. You heard the President and his reaction to public sector productivity. Prof. Hinson, was the President spot on or he was judgmental?
For me, the most profound part of the statement is we have come to accept poor service as the norm. I mean, if that's not a terrible indictment of us as a people, I don't know what it is.
Is that really the case?
I've been running a customer service crusade in this country for maybe 2 decades. Everywhere I go, I'm trying to push this issue of service excellence, because nowadays, everything is about value propositions. Wherever you go to get service, once you pay the money, the value you get should exceed whatever you've paid. Somehow, it's lost on a lot of people, and people still act as if they are doing us a favor when they serve us. My biggest challenge is, I like the President and like what he said, but the issue is, after these statements, how are these translated into action points for ministers of state? Who's going to draw a service blueprint for DVLA or for a business school somewhere in the northern region and say that these are your service benchmarks, these are your customers, this is how we measure service productivity, this is how we reward for superlative excellence, this is how we punish service deviance? So we talk about it a lot, but we don't translate it into actionable things that can begin to order the way service is delivered. I don't know what it is, but somehow I think it's a very big problem. I wrote a new book. It's coming out in 3 weeks. The chapter 3 of the book focuses on service in Ghana. And guess what? I didn't collect data by going to interview anybody. I just went on the internet and Googled service in Ghana. And the kind of stories that I found, they were totally shocking. And I mean, those stories form the basis of that chapter. And my argument is, in this globally competitive space, if you have such stories sitting on the internet, nobody has to travel to Ghana to come and see the service here. Once they can read it, we are in trouble already. And in some of those stories, the former president goes somewhere and says, improve your service. 2 years later, newspapers are carrying the same president, talking to the same institution and saying, improve your service. So I really don't know, maybe my colleagues here who are functional experts, who work in public service can help us. But I think that nowadays, when you are made CEO, and I heard somebody say yesterday on another station that Ghanaians are helpless when it comes to service, and we need to introduce public service charters, we need to go back. And the guy was also indicting the president, the former president, saying in 2001, he introduced public service charters. But the issue is that they are not implemented and so on and so forth. This guy was speaking, I just been made CEO of another public sector agency. As he spoke, all I could think about was, what is he going to do? If you introduce public service charters, the service at DVLA might be different from STC, might be different from some other. So public service charters are just a base framework. Within the context of the institution you are working in, You should come up with your own service excellence agenda, have your own service blueprint. So I like things that speak about, let's go to the days of public sector reform, bring back the Minister of Public Sector. But those are just, I don't know what to say, they are political statements. Within the scheme of you as CEO, what's your service plan? What's your service strategy? What systems are you going to use? How are you going to make the structures effective enough to deliver superior service? So I think the buck stops with the CEOs. I believe in doing things at a broad national level. But I think where the rubber meets the road, from CEOs to deans to provosts to, when you are in charge of an institution, you must make it service oriented.
Doc, the low productivity that we are talking about in the public sector, the president was spot on. He called a spade, and Prof says he's very excited about the way he put it. But this low productivity, does it have anything to do with wages?
Debbie, let me say that the president was spot on, no doubt about it. But it is not the first time. In fact,
so that statement does not motivate you at all?
It does. But what I'm saying is that Prof just said it. We have to move beyond the rhetoric. In May of 2015, Graham here organized an event in Takrade. For the first time in the history of this country, the president and his vice were at the event for 2 days on the subject of pay related to productivity. We came up, we had different sessions, we came up with a communique, all the stakeholders were represented. We came out of it, what happened? We simply went to sleep.
But in 2010, let me just refresh your memory. In 2010, President Atta Mills actually called for all televisions to be switched off during working hours. And this ban on watching TV in offices, departments, and agencies is largely still in force. And in most offices, these tellies are off. Otherwise, before then, we saw TVs on in chief executives' offices and all that. So these are these marginal things,
look,
steps that we have taken.
Why tell people to turn off the TVs when you provide them in the first place? They shouldn't be there in the first place. But that's not the point. Let's come back to the main
productivity and wages.
What is happening is that if you look at the SOEs that I was in charge of, most of them have over-bloated staff. Some of them, the skills are no longer relevant. But Prof said it, even though he muted it. The point is, you cannot sack them.
Why not?
And as long as you cannot sack a public servant, forget about productivity.
I agree.
But then again, we should look at a situation where I don't remember where the single spine started. Police. When I first came back to this country,
you cannot sack a public servant. Why not?
I think Smith can answer that.
I'm sorry to jump in. I met a CEO of a public sector 4 days ago. The person told me, Bob, the average age of everybody there is 50 plus. She said to me, their mindset is set. She said all these things you talk about, strategy, systems, skills, performance orientation, all these new public management terms, said, look, it don't work. So, we need a whole mindset change, and then we need to sort of change the people who are actually there before we can find a way forward. Why you can't sack, I don't know. I guess if you have stronger monitoring evaluation systems, you have performance tied to pay, you have merit for pay types of systems, maybe you can sack. But as it is, I'm not sure. I don't know what it takes.
Yes. Mr. Smith, Graham, why can't we sack them? Why can't we sack? We can.
We can.
So why are we not?
The laws are very clear in the labor laws and everything, what an employee can do, that you can either terminate the appointment or dismiss the employee. The laws are very clear. The difficulty is the structure of the public service and how recruitments are done in the public service. Recruitment are very critical so far as any organization is concerned. And therefore, if the public servants, there are no means of measuring the performance of people, it means that when you go and you don't have it documented and you go and dismiss people, looking at the politics in this country, it is easily played in the political light that the person has been dismissed because of politics. But the law is very clear. You need to have targets for the person. You need to measure the targets, measure the person's performance. If the person is not performing, you indicate. And once you follow all this procedure and it is the same, you can fire. But the point is that the public service structure is something that I think we all need to go into and look at the structure very, very well. And the structure is such that we've got into a stage where we need to call a spade in this country. If, for instance, let me use Doc as an example. If, for instance, you look at the way immediately after elections, people are pushed into public service institutions for political reasons.
And some lose their jobs.
Yeah. Once they get there, immediately they get there, their loyalty is to the government and not to the public service. That is one. Immediately you come in and say, Prof. Dr. Kamenta, you are fired, and you brought in somebody, then that organization is divided into two around political lines. You can't rule down those things out. They are the things that are the core to the challenges that we have in the public service. And the question I ask myself is, can't we have a way of getting people recruited into the public service? It is possible. When everybody knows that this is the procedure, this is what I'm supposed to do, and once we are able to...
the procedures guiding recruitment in the public
look,
service?
they are complicated.
They are not there, or they are there, but they are not implementable. I think
we've got into a stage where I'm advocating for a situation where...
But do we have those...
They are, but for some reasons, they don't seem to function.
Yes.
Some reasons they don't seem to function. And I think we've got into a stage where we need to call the speed. All of us will have to now sit down, probably declare a decade of productivity of something, and then now go into it to find out why the public service is like that. Until we do this empirical research to find out those things, it will be difficult. But the other things, for instance, if you take the budgets that are given to institutions, and I can say for a fact, are not linked to any national strategic plan.
No.
None. No. They are shopping lists by institutions.
Why not? The government in power comes with a manifesto, they have a plan.
But a manifesto,
they mention some big policy agendas, and those the guidelines.
I'm always fighting with people who use manifesto, my friends in
political But that is what we see.
But the thing is, a manifesto must be translated into a national strategic agenda. Manifestos are useful for winning elections. When you win the election, you shouldn't keep making recourse to a manifesto. Translate it into an actionable strategic plan with deliverables for tourism, deliverables for here, deliverables for health, and then you quantify these deliverables. Once you're able to quantify deliverables, you can begin to set targets. But if you don't quantify them, then we just keep talking a lot. Everything is amorphous.
Then what are we doing? What are we budgeting? And what are we implementing?
Like he said,
because there's a budget for 2017 and 2018. There will be another budget.
You'd be amazed how many public sector institutions prepare budgets not on the basis of any strategic plan, but on the basis of the fact that last year we spent so much. I mean, so like if you took over, you just took over. Let's look at the whole budget. Let's increase everything by 10%, and then we are good to go. You see, me, I'm just praying for the day that anybody who comes into office in any public sector position has as part of their letter targets that have been put in the letter. So that, for instance, if you are made head of Department of Anthropology, we give you a $4 million budget. Those students who come, they are customers of the department. You have to strive to ensure you meet that target. So that more than just administering the function, you work with targets, you measure it monthly, you measure it quarterly, you give feedback. One vice chancellor said several years ago, he told me in guys, he said, "Bo, Olelogo, Niaji, ka afe assessment. Mo fi about 80%, 90%, 80%. No about you. Oh, prof, fine. In one. His point was that even the assessments are done in such a way that everybody scores 82%, 89%.
Then that gives the indication that there's some target, because if people are assessed and everybody gets 80%.
Yes.
But let's look a little bit at the productivity and the wages. We've gone through many reforms that has tried to streamline and raise public wages such that we can match wages to productivity? How well have we done? Now we are doing single spine. In your assessment, how well have we done? We had the GUSS, Ghana Universal Salary Structure before then. We had many others. Now we have single spine, and we know there are issues. How well have we done with all these salary reforms?
I'll give you one institution as an example. I think 2009, when I came back to Ghana, the lowest rank of a police officer was receiving 179 cedis a month.
And that was which year?
2009.
Wow.
179 cedis. And I sympathize with the guys. They are supposed to be responsible for our security. Come single spine, it jumped to about 1,500. And we were expecting that with such a huge jump, the way policing was done in this country, the level of corruption and everything was going to go down. Did it? No. And the question comes back to what Prof was just saying. The mindset, attitudes and behaviors are engineered. You don't just wish for something to happen. As long as you don't consciously engineer behavior, it doesn't matter how much you increase the salary structures of people in this country. Right. Productivity is not going to automatically follow.
But Doc, there are some fine policemen. Let's use the police as an example because you mentioned it.
Well,
there are some very fine policemen who do very well. So shouldn't we be looking at productivity-based wages? Shouldn't we be looking at that? Because that's where we came from, where we had a lot of disparities within the wage structure.
It goes back to what Prof was saying.
Single spine. But if this is the base and everyone is getting based on their rank and it is not boosting productivity, shouldn't we go back and look at who is working?
It's a larger issue than the pay. That's what it's saying.
Yes. But there are some who are doing it right.
They are the exceptions.
Shouldn't we pay them more?
Yeah, we should pay people well who are doing. Like, if your productivity is high, you should get a commensurate salary. But the point is, the whole culture, if one or two people are doing it, it won't change anything. It is when a critical mass is doing it that we can tell the scale. So we need to look at this thing right from the very top.
Leadership is the difference between excellent service and no service. Leadership.
So we need to do something to the culture.
Right from the very top. Because
top or bottom?
No, right from the very top. If people, for example, a public servant sees a politician comes and there is some corruption or that sort of thing, he thinks, well, I have to do what I have to do as well. The politician cannot then check that public servant. And in this country, somebody told me that more than 80% of the corruption happens with the public servants, not the politicians. But because the politicians themselves are not upright, it is difficult to ensure that all the way down, things are done very well.
Exactly.
So we have to start from the very top. How are things measured at the very top? Is there productivity?
The trickle down effect.
Yeah, then you can trickle it down. One of the things we're proposing, particularly for the state-owned enterprises, was to have what we call a presidential dashboard.
There you go.
Where at the office of the president,
monitoring,
at the click of
now we have a minister in charge of monitoring and evaluation.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm saying at the office of the president, because it's a whole setup. Who is in charge of it is not really the issue, but the point is that at the office of the president, somebody is in charge who at the click of a button can see a whole sector, go into details to see the individual SOEs that are contributing to that sector, go into detail to see what specifically is happening with that individual SOE that is contributing to performance and other things. The Minister of Finance will have access to the same sort of information. The sector ministers who are responsible for these SOEs will also see the same sort of information. So at any point in time, you see what is happening. Yes. Now, if it is happening at the presidential level, definitely the CEO will have to answer to what the problems are. Exactly. So he will have to be, he will have to ensure that all those working under him are contributing to the performance.
And meeting the standards.
Meeting the standards. So it trickles down. But as long as it doesn't come from the top, we can forget it. It's going to be business as usual.
Graham, you are from the fair wages outgoing. Why hasn't all the reforms, why hasn't them worked?
First of all, salaries alone cannot translate into higher productivity.
But we've put a lot of premium on reshaping the salary structure.
The pay reform was supposed to be part of a broader public sector reform. As Prof mentioned, we adopt a system of the public sector reform and we allow it to be very generic, and we bring these generic reforms into the country. But what pertains in one organization is totally different from the other. And we need to narrow down on organization by organization to be able to know how to measure the performance there. And let me give you a practical example. If I'm measuring the performance of, let's say, a teacher, and I take a teacher, maybe a teacher, am I going to use am I going to use the score of the students, pass mark of the students or whatever? Is that what I'm going to use? If I take a teacher in Wesley Girls High School and I take a teacher in let's say
you can say of Anko Secondary.
Bunkrungu Senior High School.
There's a new school at my junction of Anko Secondary. Not occupied yet.
Okay. One of these schools, one of them is a first class school with all the students there supposedly first class. The other school has average student. Now in reward, what you do is that you reward the effort that goes into it. How are you going to measure the effort that the teacher in Wesley Girls High School put in to get a score that the students got?
Indeed.
And how are you going to measure what the teacher in Bunkrungu Secondary School to get the result?
Exactly.
And therefore, we need to get to a stage when, for instance, we take the education. And now we can all sit down with the experts in education to now know how do we then measure productivity
for a teacher.
For a teacher. When we all agree on what is supposed to be used as a measurement, that becomes the measuring stick. So it becomes the effort that is being put into it. So I can measure the effort of the teacher in Western Girls High School, measure the effort in the Bunkrungu Senior High School or whatever. The same thing, if a judge is there and is giving judgment, how do you measure the performance of the judge? But I'm sure that when the experts within that field sit down and do an analysis, they'll be able to tell how you can assess the productivity level of a. We cannot have the generic reforms that we continue having in the country. For me, that is the challenge that we are having, and we've gotten to a stage where we need to do a lot more of research. Unfortunately, academia appears to be very absent so far as these issues are concerned, and profits here.
We're trying.
I'm not sure how academic research, because I doubt if since University of Cape Coast was established, they've not done a thing like that. I'm sure it is somewhere sitting on some shelf or something. Yeah. How effectively is academia linked to the work of policy and all that? It's a major issue. Let me give another practical example. Government comes out with a policy, says, I'm restoring nursing trainee allowances. I'm restoring teacher trainee allowances. What strategic direction is it leading to?
Absolutely.
Do I necessarily have to restore for everybody? Why not have a situation where I will say that I will restore the allowances for those who will agree to say go to this particular school because I want to, I've done my analysis, I know that this institution lacks the teachers, and so I'm going to restore the allowances for nurses who agree to go to this area. I'm restoring the allowance for teachers who agree to go this. So you are spreading the skills of the teachers in all the bureaus.
Incentives that resolve problems within the sector.
But if that is not done, and you just do it across board as we all do all the time, at the end of the day, it will not lead into any efficiency, it will not lead into any productivity, it will not lead into anything, because the basis of it was political. The basis of it was not based on any empirical research of any sort. That's the difficulty we have in the public service.
Prof, it looks like politics is running everything. How people are appointed, chief executives change when a new government is in place. So we have a lot of square pegs trying to fit into round holes, and they are not fitting very well. How do we resolve this issue if the wage single spine and making sure that people are paid well do not resolve the issues?
As for politics, it's a very difficult subject. In May, I work in Legon, and I come from the marketing department. So I leave the politics for my big friends on the left side. But I want to follow up on the nursing analogy he just used. An extension of his argument will also be, will these incentives lead to improve nursing service delivery outcomes? Will nurses be more service oriented?
Exactly.
Will they treat patients faster? Will they be more meticulous how they take patient data?
Exactly.
You see, everything must come to outcome. I believe in outcomes. You see, once you have outcomes, you can measure. But once there's no strategy with benchmarks and outcomes, then we are just shooting in the dark. And the thing for me is, he spoke about the specificity of organizations. Look, the SLAs you need here, service level agreements, the SOPs you need here, standard operating procedures, the customer service charter you need here in your media general group might be markedly different from what they need at multimedia or only media. And it's because of the specificity of your agenda here.
Sure.
So in marketing, we have a new term we call branded customer service, where we are saying that everybody must be service oriented. But the Mercedes customer service should be different from the Jaguar customer service, should be different from the Toyota customer service. So within your brand DNA, find out exactly what your customers want and begin to design propositions that delight them. Because at passport office, the issues are very different from the nursing department in Legon. If you go to DVLA. The issues are very, very different from which other state-owned enterprise do we have, for instance? Like a public, like Ghana Post. The issues are very different. So a public service charter is good. National customer service charters are good. But I think the CEO of Ghana Post should understand the specificities of the needs of Ghana Post customers and devise a strategy that takes those needs into account so that what they deliver will excite them. Look, me, I've always said, I met the new head of the Accra Metropolitan Authority a couple of nights ago, and I told him that, listen, there's this notion that AME, you're just ripping us off. You just take them and we don't know what you do for us. It might not be a correct notion. But the thing is, once AMA starts to position themselves as caring, listening, taking our needs into consideration, designing policy, delighting us, satisfying us, then they can even charge us a premium we'll be prepared to pay because we are citizens of the country.
We can see
the value in what they give us. So on the issue of productivity, I think respectfully that everybody should start to introduce these standard operating procedures, these service level agreements, and begin to measure the way service is delivered. I was speaking to a CEO once, and the CEO, after 2 years in office, hadn't evaluated the senior most admin person in the public sector agency. So I was asking the CEO, what was this? The CEO said, well, they are not been giving a form from HR to evaluate the person. I said, no, what you are doing is not correct. You are trying to be politically correct. But what you are trying to do then is that you are injuring the organization because you want to be politically correct. So some of these state enterprise CEOs probably want first term, second term, third term, fourth term. So they rather not rock the boat, do the work quietly, and then move on with their lives. And wait for the president to come to May Day and then just lambast all of us. So I think this conundrum can be sorted out if leaders will take charge, set the rules, measure. There's a scripture in 1 Timothy 5:20, the B part. It says, them that sin repeatedly, punish openly, that the rest may stand in fear. I like using the scripture because I keep thinking that, madam, you did the wrong thing, I didn't mind you. I didn't mind you. By the time you do the third time, I should give you a small credit to tell you, madam, I don't appreciate the way you are cannibalizing the service effort. Fourth time, I'll tell you, madam, get ready to go. Fifth time, I'll let you go. You see, we need to begin to set some examples because there's a notion that in public sector, whatever you do will not be penalized. And therefore, there's no incentive to do the right thing.
There's no incentive to do it right. On that note, we'll go for a break. When we come back, we will look at the solutions. How do we fix our public sector? Because really, that is what all of us need, an efficient public sector. We'll be back shortly. Yeah, welcome back. This is still Agenda on TV3. We are looking at public sector productivity, and my guests are still here, and they are helping us to understand what is in the public sector. Mr. Smith-Graham, how do we fix this issue, especially wages and productivity? Because single spine, the GUSS, and all the other pay reforms, we have done them. This is where we are. How do we move forward?
Well, first of all, as we've all mentioned, productivity is a culture issue. it comes with a mindset change. That is one.
So where do we start from?
Apart from that, you need a very strong drive from leadership. And from leadership, I'm talking about the very top, the presidency. The president has done very well in coming out with these statements. Now, after coming out with the statement, somebody should be able to drive all of us along.
Who should that be?
That, you see, I'm looking at a situation where we have a direction that we are all heading towards. And therefore, if I'm working in Fair Wage and Sales Commission as a chief executive, and I have certain targets that I'm achieving, I know that my target is leading into this aspect of this national agenda. The one who is working at the State Enterprises Commission knows that it is leading into a certain agenda in a certain national agenda. But currently, as we speak, it looks as if most of institutions are doing their own thing. As I mentioned earlier on from the beginning, there are no strategic directions per se. How many institutions have strategic plans? Strategic plans are not there. Very codified strategic plan that is leading into a certain national agenda. They don't exist. So once we're able to get there, and every institution has a strategic plan, then you know that you are providing resources to the institution to be able to provide A, B, C, D. It is not as if an institution has submitted any, excuse my language, shopping list. And so we look at the list and say, okay, this one will give you 20% of the amount. So you give the person any amount of money. Now they get the money, the institution gets the money. What they will be able to do with the money is what they will do. And it will not lead into any national productivity agenda. If even it means that we will have to try it by identifying, let's say, a maximum of about 5 or 6 institutions, and know that, look, these 6 institutions, when we really help them to stand, they will have rippling effect on other institutions. And say that, look, let's get them the strategic plan. These are the strategic plan. These are the resources we are providing to them, and do an assessment to see exactly how will it impact on their productivity level. I think it will help. If not, we'll come out with one policy after the other, and most often the policies are driven by, should I say, politics. How people will look at you, and not necessarily that it is leading into any strategic direction of the country or anything. For me, that is the difficulty, and I think that we've gotten to a stage where we need, and like Prof mentioned, we've been having discussion, and I'm happy that PSC has done that now, where before anybody is appointed, when you are appointed, you are given specific a fixed term contract. But even that now, after it was put into trial, has been defeated, because you get a contract, you know you are supposed to perform within a certain time frame. Now the time frame would cut across a political election. Now the election comes, you are booted out. So at the end of the day, you realize that it doesn't necessarily really help in, and for all you know, when those things happen in an organization, every organization is divided along political lines as the country. And so immediately that thing happens, those who are peeved that the chief executive has been removed then begin to plan how to sabotage the other person. And why can't we have a unique way of doing things in this country to go beyond the politics of it? For me, that is what I think we need to be doing. Again, we need to be institution specific and know exactly what the challenges of institutions are, and stop the generic reform processes that we do in this country. So you take education, you know exactly what their problems are, you do research, you know that the solutions you are bringing is to solve specific problems in say, education. You go to the judiciary, you do the same thing. You go here, you do the same thing. So as you are bringing about the solution, it is solving specific problems in the various institutions, and not the generic ones. If not, you increase salaries, and increase salaries, and increase salary, it will not translate into anything. This morning I was thinking, I said, assuming I give somebody a target, and the target I've given to the person, because the institution has no strategic plan, I've given the person the target. I say, look, every morning pick the daily graphic and give it to all the heads of institutions, and then you come. So the person, every morning he comes, he picks the daily graphic, distribute them. Is the person being productive?
Well, if that is a person's job, why not? Prof, we've done a number of things as a country. 40-year development plan. We don't know where that is now. We know the yes, we know the single spine. We still have a few issues to deal with it.
Yes,
we know now we have a minister at the presidency in charge of monitoring and evaluation. My understanding of M&E is that there must be a plan.
Yes.
And if you do not have a plan, then you can monitor.
Yes,
how do we link all these pieces so that we have a coherent way of doing things before we go to the sector-specific strategies and targets?
Okay, so my colleague spoke about a dashboard, and you just spoke about a minister for monitoring and evaluation. Maybe one of the first steps would be to come up with some service excellence dashboard that stipulates ministry by ministry, agency by agency, what their objectives are, productivity-wise, service excellence. So look, in Hungary...
Would that be work that you would put at the doorstep of the minister in charge of monitoring and evaluation?
Hey, as for putting jobs at ministers' doorsteps, I'm not too sure I can do that.
Because if we care about a dashboard at the presidency,
you could.
Whose job is that?
You could, because
whose job is that?
That's trade monitoring and evaluation. Once you say dashboard, it's trade monitoring. So if you want to put it there, I'll put it there with you, no problem.
No, I don't want. I'm asking you if you want to put it there.
Okay, I'll put it there, no problem.
Great.
I'll put it there. Be careful when you report me after putting it there. Okay, so, but I want to give an example. Look, in Hungary in 2001, they came up with this issue, this concept of payment by results. So they tried to mix that up with the way the civil sector was working. What they did was that every minister or civil sector head will say that, okay, I'm in charge of transport. So Ghana Airports Company Limited, this is your target. Ghana Civil Aviation Authority, this is your target. So they set organizational targets for all the agencies under that sector ministry. Then for you, you had personal targets that were linked to that organizational target. Sure. And then the third layer was that you had a written evaluation of how you performed against those targets in respect of what you were supposed to contribute to meeting same. And at that time, you could get bonuses of between plus 20%, no, plus 30% to minus 20%, based on whether you met your personal objectives or targets or not. I think that if we become a lot more focused on measuring output, because the thing with generic pay, that happens only because you move to grade X or grade Y or grade Z, is that it usually is not an incentive to work hard, because whether you work or you don't work, we all get paid. We just have to wait for a while and move to the next step, do whatever we like and move to another step. So I think a service excellence dashboard will help, and I think payment by results in terms of bonuses you can give might also help. Those are just
We've come from a system of bonuses and allowances and having a lot of disparity, and that's why...
You see, I came from private sector before I joined the university. For 5 years, I was working in a big ad agency. So I was used to bonuses.
And I'm sure Mr. Smith-Graham knows what bonuses have done to the public sector.
Oh, you give
very bonuses and allowances, variations, okay. And sometimes people's bonuses were twice or 3 times more than their salaries.
Allowances and the basic salaries, they are generic, as Prof is saying. Now, if you go into it right now and saying that you are going to reward people so far as the effort, as Prof is saying, and then you give them bonuses. I'm not sure how it's going to work within the public sector.
Difficult. Okay.
See, getting even money to reward those people will be a challenge. That's why I keep saying that we need to be able to ensure that it fits right within the budget of the various institutions, because we know the direction that the institution is going. All these things could be factored in. But if you go right now to the university and say the university should pay bonuses to lecturers that are doing well and those that are not doing well, I'm not sure how the university will be able to do it within the current public service structure. That's going to be
even those from years ago, I heard there were moves to try and do that. I don't think that's happened yet.
Yes.
The example you gave us from which country?
Hungary. Yes.
Now, it will interest you to know, Debbie, that we do exactly the same thing in this country.
Oh, okay.
And Prof is talking because he said he comes from a private sector background. Now, this is specific to the state-owned enterprises, of which I was the executive chairman until a couple of weeks ago. Now, we sign performance contracts with all the state-owned enterprises on an annual basis. We set targets for each of these institutions.
Such as, give us a practical example.
But you don't
civil aviation is one of it. Ghana Airports Company is one of it. Okay. Gapoha is one of it. Sure. GMPC is one of it. Ghana Water Company, Gihog Distilleries, Graphic, GBC. There are over 40 of them.
Okay.
So we do these things. Now, the problem that has happened in the past is over the years, the ownership responsibility of these SOEs have been more by the ministers in charge. And so the institution that was supposed to do the work was not strengthened enough. Okay. And so most of the things were not able to happen the way we expected them to happen. The other problem was that government has a responsibility to the SOEs. So if government doesn't fulfill its part of the responsibility, how do you hold the SOE to the targets that you have set?
Financial responsibility? What specific responsibility?
Yeah, financial responsibility is one of them. ECG, for example, I know you heard over a period of time they kept saying government owes us.
Exactly.
Government owes us.
Exactly.
Now government turn around and say, oh, by the way, we provided you the assets.
So have we done a balancing?
Yeah, exactly. So those were some of the issues. Yes. But coming back to where the monitoring and evaluation thing should sit, I am not too sure the answer directly rests with the minister in charge of monitoring and evaluation. And the reason is this. The public sector is quite broad. We have the straight public service, which comprises the ministries, the agencies, the departments, and other things. Then we have the state-owned companies, which is different in a way from, even though broadly they all come under public service, there is a distinction. So the bonuses system works with the state-owned enterprises based on the performance contracts that we do and other things. So once at the end of the year they are able to meet certain things, the targets that were set, they were able to meet them.
And these targets,
they are allowed.
And these targets more of revenue targets.
No. What happens with us at State Enterprises Commission is we cut across 4 areas. Even the fact that they submit their reports regularly at the time that they are supposed to submit their reports is captured. We have the financial side, which carries a particular weight. We have the dynamic effects. We have
what about service orientation?
Well, it's part of it. It's captured in there.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying the system has been perfect. I've given you some of the underlying causes, but the template is there. And the format in which we are supposed to do it is there. And when you're able to meet all the targets, there is a score. Once you get the required score, then you're allowed to pay bonuses subject to financial availability within the institution.
We also know about revenue targets for state institutions that make revenue, DVNA, Passport Office, and the others. And we know they overachieve their targets. But today we sit here, we hear leakages within those same institutions. So how do we set this target such that we overachieve them and then we still have a lot of leakages? And they low targets, easy to achieve targets that we set for a lot of these revenue making institutions. So that we achieve it easily and then we applaud them.
If you take DVLA,
120%. And
DVLA doesn't produce. They just collect.
They collect.
So it's not a question of they overachieve their targets.
Well,
because with DVLA,
they all have some targets to achieve. Let's go for a break, and then when we come back, we will conclude. We are still looking at public sector productivity. You're welcome back. This is still Agenda. We are concluding on public sector productivity. Dr. Smith-Graham, Mr. Smith-Graham, sorry. In terms of conclusion, what would you look out for in the next few years? We have a government who says he's in a hurry. He said it very clearly and openly. What should be your expectation?
My view is that we need to now begin looking at the institutions and the service charters, as Prof mentioned. But before we get there, we need to look at the current employees that we have in the various organizations, look at their mindset, the sort of training we give to them, and all that. And then we now look at how we now bring people into the system. My research has shown that recruitment is very critical so far as productivity is concerned. Because when you bring somebody in and the person already fits into a culture that you have already established, it becomes easy for the person to be productive. But if you bring somebody in through a certain back door and the person comes, the agenda becomes a bit problematic. So I think that we've gotten to a stage where we need to be looking at institution by institution, conducting proper research to find out where the challenges are with the institution and stop the generic business that we do in the country. And when we have done that, we'll be able to then look at the problems of each institution and find specific solutions to those institutions. I think that is what we need to be doing at the moment. And once we do that, we'll solve problems of the institution, and the institutions that do not need to exist, if have to be abolished, can be abolished. Those that have to be merged,
institutions that
there can be several of them that are duplicating functions. If they have to be merged because they are duplication of functions, we merge them. If they have to be weaned off government subvention, as we've started doing already, you wean them off government subvention and you allow them to be on their own and allow the board to run them as professionally as possible. I think that is the stage we need to get to. And once we're able to do that, we shouldn't have difficulties with productivity in the public service.
Doc, what should we do to our wages?
I want to take it higher than what we should just do to our wages. I want to say that all the systems, the performance procedures and everything that Graham and Prof have been professing since we started should start at the office of the president.
That dashboard is important.
Not just the dashboard, but the office of the president itself. They must have performance-related things. How do we do this? How do we measure the people there? At the office of the chief of staff should take that responsibility. One of the things that makes me sad is that you see a top official at the office of the president with a Yahoo email address, Gmail address.
And they use that to send professional emails.
Exactly. And we talk about security. So if we can get the office of the president to take the first step in making sure that all the systems are in place, the performances are measured there, the strategy, the office of the president itself must have what Prof calls a strategic plan with everything in there. Now, once you take the lead, then you can cascade down to all the other institutions in the country.
What should we do to our wages? You didn't touch wages at all. There are public sector workers who are so very interested.
If they set a good example at the top, it will cascade down. By the time you have indices for measurement, you become service oriented, you become very productive, whatever you are being paid will now be merited because you are delivering value to your customers.
Are we saying that what people are earning now are not merited?
No, the thing is, my pay is very small. I work in the public sector myself, but I'm just believing God and moving along. It's not very small.
So the question is, what should we do to make sure that you can give off your best? Because we know you are professional.
As for me, I'm just passionate about the university.
But we don't have all passionate people in the public sector. We have some people who are working and need to be remunerated.
Absolutely.
For due.
So I think what we need
service.
to do is that look, there's a phrase that great service follows the law of gravity. So if you see a company or a ministry with a good service ethos, the leader is usually the one who's pushing the agenda for service excellence. So this pay issue, all I can say is that you can't reduce salaries in Ghana's public sector. It won't happen. No. So what you need to do is to try and improve the quality of the service output in terms of the individuals who make up those entities, so that they can deliver better value and make even more money. I guess when you make more money, like my colleague is saying, you can pay bonuses. So
some specific institutions.
Absolutely. But what I propose is that maybe for the next budgeting season, they should all do some audits. He spoke about research a lot. Do some audits. Whether it's DVLA or GAPOA or Ghana Airport, you can do an audit of your strategy, your systems, your structures. But there should be one overriding concern that will deliver more value, and make Ghana a service hub, so that we can follow the example of Singapore, who have no raw materials, but they are known as a solid service economy.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. We had Mr. George Smith Graham, we had Dr. Kaminta Beze, and then we have Professor Robert Ebo Hinson. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for throwing light on this very important.
Should I show them my book so that they can buy some for the public service?
Prof, we charge you for showing your book. Go ahead.
Please, you can also consider this one. It will help.
Which one is that? Customer Service Essentials.
Correct. And the chapter 3 is on service in Ghana.
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll send you a bill after the show. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you for being part of the show. Thanks to the production team. My name is Deborah Kwabla. God willing, same time next week, 3 p.m. every Sunday, we'll bring you Agenda on TV3. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and have a productive week.